My name is Sarah Hinks from Culture Shift. We're a charity that builds dynamic partnerships fusing culture with community, business and education. Today, we are welcoming a selection of local East Sussex professionals from the creative and digital media industry. First, we're going to show you a short film highlighting some key areas of the industry. The creative media sector has a wide range of industries, each overlapping each other, with large amounts of people employed in roles that cover multiple opportunities, including TV, film, radio, interactive media, computer gaming, photo imaging, marketing and advertising. Digital technology is transforming the way we make, distribute, receive, exchange and deliver goods and services, as well as our artistic and cultural content. With AI, AR, VR, 5G becoming commonplace with supporting vast data centres, the digital tech industry is growing 6 times faster than any other sector in the UK, employing 3 million people, and it's growing. You could be subscribing to an entertainment site, gaming, listening to music, reading books and design and fashion. Digital industry overlaps with all sectors, interconnecting through design and delivery with engineering, research, finance, insurance, health and well-being, as well as support for businesses to deliver their services, from the big corporates to small SMEs, and the freelancer and the self-employed. Pre the pandemic, the creative industries contributed 11.7 billion of value to the UK economy and exported over 35 billion of services. The United Nations has dedicated this whole year to the creative economy and its critical role in promoting sustainable development in the post-COVID world, strengthened by digitalisation and tech developments. Recruitment and pathways are changing, with degree apprenticeships competing with university courses. Online networks such as LinkedIn advertise jobs alongside a huge range of tech events that have adapted to COVID restrictions, such as Tech Week and the VFX Festival. I'm going to introduce you to some of our wonderful panellists who represent some of the careers on offer in the creative and digital sector. They have a breadth of experience and expertise in the industries that they will share with you today. Please do put any of your questions in the live Q&A and we will endeavour to address these all after the introductions. So first, we're going to go to Sean Ross Fidel.
Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you very much, Sarah, for the introduction. My name is Sean Ross Fidel. I'm a solutions engineer at a local company called Factory Internet. We are an IT company, an NSP or managed services provider, which means we deal with all things computing, IT and technical related. It's a bit of a strange job title, solutions engineer. And of course, it's one that you'd expect might have quite a few different roles or aspects to it. As a solutions engineer, I work across really all different aspects of our business, from our sales portion to dealing with customers firsthand and working closely with our technical engineering and delivery team to really understand every aspect of a product or a service that we're actually providing or selling. It's quite an interesting role. It's one that keeps you on your toes and really can be quite varied day to day depending on who you're dealing with or what kind of thing we're doing. I got into this industry through really nothing more than just having a massive interest in technology. I've always loved it, whether it's tinkering around with a mobile phone or a computer, or of course really enjoying and consuming all of the great creative aspects like movies, video games, and of course all sorts of digital media. It's a great industry that I feel has lots to be learned. There is still lots of progression to go, and is something that's great for young people to really get involved in. And there are so many ways that you can find your path, whether it's in something a bit more technical, like hopefully what we'll talk about a bit later with me, and of course some of the more creative offerings that we have as well.
Thank you, Sean. That was fantastic. So now we're going to move on to Tony Dillon, please.
Hello everybody, hope you can hear me out there. I am Tony Dillon and I work as a business consultant and a coach in creative industries. So what that involves is that I help people make decisions to do with their creative business, or indeed to do with progressing their own career. So that's why I'm very happy to be with you today, because I hope that some of you are about to take some decisions about your next steps. So how I got into creative industries is a slightly unconventional route. I went through the professional support route because, as Sarah mentioned, there's lots and lots of different roles in creative companies. And what I did was I was a lawyer, so I got a job as the production lawyer for a live television company. And I loved that job and I loved all the different people that I worked with. And I realised that there's a very important thing to do with work, which is that I don't like to be bored. So the great thing about working in creative industries is that you get to work with lots of different people in different sectors. So I've made a quick list of different sectors that I've worked in, just in case it's of interest to you. Put stuff in the Q&A if it is. I've worked in TV, radio, internet services, film, theatre, merchandising. Lots of Dalek here. And social media sort of seems to cover everything at the moment, and also live events. This thing that we're doing here today with Culture Shift is a live event. You are part of a media happening, so I hope that you'll enjoy it. What I enjoy about the work that I do is that I work on projects where people have an idea and they carry it right the way through a process, and at the end of it you've got a toy, or you've got a film, or you've got a new service. So it's very easy to see what people have achieved. It's also important to note that, as a great metaphor for life, when you work in creative industries, sometimes things don't go entirely according to plan. So it's all about resilience and adaptability. And that's actually why I think it's a fantastic time to get into the industry, because the challenges that the last year has given all of us will mean that what people want from entertainment, from news, from services is going to change. And that's why it's really important that we get more young people involved in the industry, so that you can share your ideas and develop your ideas about what services should look like in the future. So as I say, that's what makes me passionate about working in creative and digital.
Thank you, Tony. That's great. I'm trying to think of one of those industries you haven't worked in then, so I'm going to go for cyber security. Anyway, I'd like to introduce you to our next panelist, who is Verity Webb.
Hi there, I'm Verity. I am a social media content assistant at Dixie Media in Eastbourne, which is a social media marketing and training consultancy. We work with a range of clients from different sectors, including construction, interior design, finance, the property market, charities, and e-commerce, and so many industries. So I've got fingers in loads of different pies and like knowing different bits and pieces. So how did I get here? So I went to college and I did level 3 creative media BTEC. And whilst I was at college, I gained as much work experience as I possibly could. And also I volunteered with my local radio station, Helsham FM, and also my community festival, Helsham Festival, running their social media pages. And then one day the station manager at Helsham FM just said, "Hey, I've got a training session at Dixie Media. Do you want to come join?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" So I went along, and at the end of the session, I thought, "Oh, I feel like I could work here. You know, I feel like I've got the skills and everything." So I asked about work experience, and I was emailing back and forth about potentially coming in for that. And then literally a few days later, the boss posted a job. They're looking for a content assistant. So I was like, "Oh, can I go for that first?" And I applied and got it, and here I am 2.5 years later.
Thank you. Thank you, Verity. That was really helpful and really interesting to hear about your roles. Now we're going to pass on to Will Davis.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Morning, everyone. Pleasure to be talking to you this morning. My name's Will Davis, and I'm co-director of a small documentary film production company called Whalebone Films. And we started in London in 2014, and we've been in Hastings since 2017. So in terms of my personal journey, I didn't always want to work in film. I never really considered it growing up. I didn't know what I wanted to do while I was at school. So I kind of followed my nose and just did things I was interested in. And that included being in a few bands, which sometimes, you know, it pays off to just follow your nose and do things you're interested in, as you'll see. I was lucky enough to go, I guess an important thing actually about, I grew up on the Isle of Wight, and there were so many jobs, like all the jobs we've heard described by my colleagues this morning, I'd never heard of them. I didn't know they existed. Everyone I knew was either a teacher or a tradesperson. So there are so many jobs out there that sometimes when you're at school and you know you exist in your bubble, you don't even know they're there. So I was lucky enough to go to university in London, and that was a bit of an explosion in terms of things I was exposed to. I learned about lots of new worlds, and at that point I was thinking maybe I'll go into teaching. So I taught in Japan for a while, taught English in Japan. And while I was there, I met my wife, Chloe, who is from this country. She was also there teaching, and she was talking about doing a master's in documentary film when we got back. And I thought that sounds interesting. So we came back to the UK, and I started helping out on her the film she was making for her master's, because I thought, well, I've been in bands, I know a bit about microphones. So that kind of worked for a while, and I started to enjoy it. And then meanwhile, I was kind of realizing I wasn't very good at teaching. So it's very difficult teaching. You should have huge respect for your teachers. And I applied to go to the National Film and Television School, which is an amazing institution for filmmakers. And I went there as a sound recordist, to train to be a sound recordist. But the way that the film school works is that although I was training on the sound recording course, I collaborate. I sort of got a window into all different aspects of filmmaking, and it really kind of built my confidence up, and that was a wonderful experience. And then by the time I left, I was starting to just work on people's films as a volunteer sometimes, or for very little money, just because I like doing it. And then my wife and I thought, okay, let's get serious about this. So we set up our company, and now here we are kind of 6 or 7 years later, and it's been great. And we have a range of clients. Our work kind of divides into commissions, and they tend to be work which charities or companies or arts organizations have asked us to do on the one hand, and then on the other hand, documentaries which tend to be kind of passion projects that we want to do ourselves. And we're hoping to get to a situation, and it is slowly happening, where we leave the commissions behind, and we get paid enough money from the passion projects that we can just focus on them. So like I say, we're a small company, and that means that there's 3 of us who work at Whalebone Films full time now, and between the 3 of us, and occasionally with help from freelancers, we do all aspects of filmmaking. So although I trained as a sound recordist, I'm actually not doing that much sound recording these days. I do editing and pre-production, so planning the shoots, finding out what we're going to shoot, creating ideas, and then the post-production, which is the editing process and the sound mixing and so on. it's a wonderful career. As Sarah said at the beginning, it's a growing industry. I think when I started out, my parents thought it was a bit of a pipe dream to want to have a career in filmmaking, but it's as realistic an aspiration as any other industry.
Thank you, Will. That was really interesting. So we're going to move on now to Julian Perrott.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julian Perrott. I'm the managing director of a digital company in Eastbourne called Bark Web. I've been asked to share how I got here. Well, I'm not 21, so this is a little bit of a story. Obviously, I went to school, just like all you are currently, school or college. I'd say I did okay. I kind of scraped through. I went to a very good school that had some really interesting things to do in the sixth form. So I spent a lot of time working with a blacksmith, a professional photographer, and doing silkscreen printing and really sort of getting into art. So when I left school, much to my father's chagrin, I went to art college. So that was a good time. Art college in the early 80s wasn't quite art college in the early 60s, but it was still cool. However, I ran out of money pretty quickly, so I found myself washing dishes in a restaurant because you've got to do something for money, yeah. And then sort of like started to realise that actually art college wasn't for me. I couldn't really see myself going into a degree. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't know whether I wanted to be a photographer, a sculptor, or anything really. I was just doing it because I thought it was cool. So that was a bit of a career path ending thing, but my career in the restaurant had sort of taken off. So I'd started washing dishes. Within 9 months, I badgered my line manager to do other things. So I was a chef, and then I was a duty manager. And within 9 months, I was running the business. So at 19, having left school and gone to art college, a year later, I was running a restaurant with 45 people in it. And did that for 3 years. That was a really good period in my life. However, restaurants wasn't really floating my boat, so I went and got another job in IT, and I found a company who were at the time fairly progressive. They were building their own software. They were building computers and putting them in to offices in very early networking. So this was pre-internet times. I learned a little bit of programming. I learned frontline support for people, Windows 3.1. I don't know whether any of you even know what that is, but the first time Windows was released, it was a version called 3.1. That was all very exciting. Ultimately went into sales and some interesting stuff while I was there. We did a bit of networking on old mainframe computers. Again, mainframe is a word from the past, but I'm not joking that I used to go to a room that had 4 ladies typing into a machine, and out came a series of cards about the size of a credit card, which they then have about 200 of these things at a time, and they put them into the mainframe, and the mainframe would go and read them. So that was basically data entry in a very old, long time ago way. After that, I kind of like bumped back into restaurants, got tempted to go and run a few restaurants, people troubleshoot a couple of restaurants that were in trouble. Again, that was fun. It was a really good restaurant in Farnham where we had lots of celebrities there, so that was cool. Morton Harkett from Aha was one of my favourite clients. I think I fell in love with his wife. Anyway, after that, I then went and did something really crazy. So I wanted to move back into my local area again, and I saw an advert for an ice sculptor. So I thought, oh, well, my background, I reckon I could be an ice sculptor. So off I went for the interview with that and ended up being an ice sculptor for 3 years. After 2 years, I did ask the guy, how come you gave me the job? Was it my artistic tendencies? And he said, no, you were just the biggest person we interviewed, and ice is heavy. So if you want to be an ice sculptor, maybe you need to get fit. Is probably my advice on that one. But that was great. You know, we did a lot of good stuff. It was a great company to work for, very interesting, and very, very cold in the winter, believe me. While I was doing that, a friend of mine was working for another company that were a nationwide company selling stationery and print. And I thought, yeah, maybe I should go back into sales and give that a go. I immediately did very well on that. I had an area in the M3, M4 corridor, which was horrible to drive to from where I was, but quickly got moved into the City of London. So I was working with large sort of banks, etc., in EC2 and EC3. That was great, but the company I was working for sold 50% of its shares, or 49%, for a load of money, and then bought an enormous warehouse that Prince Charles came and opened, and it was all going very well until such time as it went live, and they slowly started going bust. Problem was that it was a French company who had written the software, and when they were developing it, the French company spoke English. And when it went live, the French company didn't speak any English. So there was a massive communication issue. I could see problems going on that. So I decided to, again, sort of like move my career. I tried to get another couple of jobs in sales, but no one wanted me. So alongside all this, I built this little piece of wood, which I don't know whether you can see that. So what this is this comes apart, if I can do it, on an XYZ joint. Ta-da. Now that I decided to turn into lights. So I made a series of lights with an XYZ joint in each corner, lots of micro joinery going on. And I did that for about 8 months and realized very quickly that I was just burning all my savings because I wasn't selling any. So what did I do? I built a website. So this was basically in about 1998. And people then came to me and said, hey, that's a really good website. Can you build us a website? And at that point, the penny dropped. So I started at that point using a lot of the experience that I gained over the years. So going back to my IT side, going back to my art side, going back to my sales side, amalgamated them all, and have grown, Barkweb over the last 20 years. What we do as a company, I don't like the word, but we're kind of like an agency. I think agency is a slightly weak word. It doesn't really tell you what people do. We have 4 main departments. We have a design department. So design doesn't really need much explanation. That's Photoshop, Adobe XD, Illustrator, pushing pixels around, drawing circles, squares, etc. Development, that's really the engine of our business. That's the programming side, of which we do a lot. Probably 50% plus of our business is web development. So actually the database driven side of websites. And then we have a little bit like Verity, we have a department which does search engine optimization, social media, and paid search. We tend to focus on our own clients, but we do have entry clients there as well. So those 4 things bring us clients in through different services, but we have the whole gamut of services in our industry, so we can offer people a full service package. A few things to note about us is we don't use open source software, so we don't use WordPress, we don't use Joomla, we don't use a lot of the content management platforms. We have our own platform. What we're aiming to do is release our own platform and become a platform provider. We're getting very close to that. We've been working on that for the last 3 or 4 years, or a bit longer if I'm being truthful. Clients, example clients for us is East Sussex Highways. They're a big client for us, so we manage the whole of their front end of their reporting issues online. We've got a large local retailer called DB Domestics, who we do a lot of e-commerce work for. We also have a system for them to manage their spares and repairs, and their engineers go out on site and use a progressive web app of ours. So it's actually a website that will work offline. That's kind of a new technology we're getting into. We have a door installer and fire door maintenance company who inspect a lot of the large universities, and I've got something like 200,000 doors on their books, and we have an application to help them manage all those. And we have a really nice company called PT&A who do vehicle testing. So one of their clients is McLaren. Occasionally I go up there and get stuffed in a McLaren for a day and drive that round, or a new Bentley or a Jag or an Aston Martin. Very nice. So we get to do some interesting things as well with our clients. I think the future is definitely our market, and I think you're well placed if you're interested in what's going on here. Hope that's a good introduction to what we do. Over and out.
Thank you, Julian. Well, you've certainly shared with us kind of quite a varied career route in terms of becoming the managing director of your company. So there's some really interesting things there. What I'm going to do now is we've got some questions that are coming through the chat. So I'm going to actually ask these first. So anybody out there, please put your questions in the Q&A and we will try to get them as we go along. The first one is, are jobs in creative and digital more flexible than other sectors? Can you move more easily between a company or a team? I'm wondering, Tony, whether that would be one that you might be able to answer. So thinking about the flexibility of jobs in the creative and digital sector.
Yes, Sarah, definitely. Well, certainly I found that was the case. I found when I moved into creative industries that it was easier for me to be brave. So on 3 occasions, I left one job without a job to go to, and every time I either got freelance work or got something else. So there's a huge sort of freelance economy within the sector, and I'm freelance myself now. What I would say is some advice from the lady who used to look after the freelancers at the TV company where I first worked. She said, you have to be resilient. You have to try not to spend all your freelance fees at once to start with. Try and save a bit just in case you have a phase during which you're not working as much. So that was a good tip that she had for all of the musicians that work for us at the TV company.
Thank you. The next question was probably a bit similar, actually. It did say, are most people employed or self-employed in the digital sector? And I think you've probably answered that, unless, Julian, you've got anything else you would like to add from your perspective?
I thought that the interesting question there was, are the jobs more flexible than they are in other sectors? Can you move more easily within a company? I think that our industry moves quite quickly. There are trends, there are new technologies, there are opportunities all the time. I think as far as we're concerned, when we take somebody on board, we don't necessarily know what they're good at. We know what we've interviewed them for. We don't really know what they're going to be doing long term. So I think that the answer is yes. I think there's a lot of flexibility in our sector. There's a lot of crossover in most jobs. Most jobs aren't just design. Design is also an element of design will be talking to somebody and working out what they need. It's not just delivering a design. And then it will also sort of like interfacing with the development team to get it built. And you might be involved in that a little bit as well. So just an example of this, there's a lot of crossover. So I think, yes, I think it is flexible in our department. I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Julian. That's great. We've got a question about coding, actually. So I'd like to get good at coding, but there aren't many chances at school to learn this that well. Are there other ways that I could learn, like clubs or any ways of learning online? I know that there are various coding clubs. I know Tech Resort in Eastbourne offers coding clubs, so maybe we can put them in the chat. There are also organisations like I think they're called Girls That Code or Girls Get Code that run clubs in different places. I don't know if any of the panel has any more information about that, or whether maybe Sean, I'm not sure. Do you have any information about coding?
Yeah, of course. That's a great question. Coding and programming in general is something that really is quite integral to many jobs in computing and IT, as you might expect. But I think that lots of people don't necessarily realise, through no fault of your own, from the outside looking in, the world of coding is far bigger than you might think. And sometimes the best way to get started and the best programming language, as they're called, to learn isn't necessarily one that's going to be most useful to you in actual application. So programming languages, just like real life languages, are great, except you need to know a different one for each kind of place you go, each thing you want to do. So for example, if you were somebody like Julian, who's doing lots of things in the web, you might need to know, for example, if you're doing stuff from the ground up, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Whereas if you're doing kind of a more base system programming, you might want to know C or Python. There's quite a varied range. In terms of resources to get started though, one which is quite basic and great for beginners is a website called W3 Schools. Let me just see if I can share, hopefully, that page with you, which is a website which is great for getting started on these kinds of things, which will give you examples of how different programming languages work and some great different ways to kind of get stuck into them and do some testing. There's also websites which get slightly more advanced, places like Code Institute or Code Academy. They have great courses that you can sign up for. Many of them are free, and some of them you may have access to through school, for example, educationally, which will give you a kind of great look into not only which routes you should go down for different jobs and which languages and resources are going to be most helpful to you, but also kind of the wider field around them, which I feel is quite important for a lot of people to have nowadays. Hope that helps.
Great, thank you, Sean. That was really helpful. Julian, would you like to add something to that, please?
Yeah, I think that it's a very interesting question. How do you want to learn programming? How do you learn programming? Well, I think it's very simple. I think you have to have an idea that you want to produce. Okay, I think learning programming without a purpose is very, very hard. So if you have, I don't know, a little database of records that you want to, or films you've watched that you want to create, and you want to deliver it in a certain media, and the browser would be the target media these days. I think the trick is learning programming without a purpose, i.e. something to build at the end of it, is really hard. If you've got something you want to do, you will find a way to do it.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So do keep those questions coming through the Q&A, please, everybody. Will, I wanted to ask you a question. Could you just share with us what you think the main pathways or the most common routes are into kind of filmmaking?
Sure. I mean, I suppose my answer is going to be slightly coloured by, of course, my own experience and the experience of friends. But I would say, so one thing I'll say is that we quite often as a company get young people approaching us wanting to come into the industry. And one of the things that they say is, I really want to be a filmmaker. And in a way, there's no need to, that sentence shouldn't be said, because either in this day and age where it's so easy to make a film, either you need, if you want to be a filmmaker, then go out there and make a film. And if you've made a film, have the confidence to call yourself a filmmaker, even if it's only a 2-minute small film that you made on your own. You are a filmmaker. And on the other side of the coin, if you haven't made a film, then why not? You know, either get stuck in and make a film, or ask yourself, why haven't you jumped in? Maybe there's something holding you back. And it's a bit like Julian said, the best way to gain experience and to learn, in his example, coding, and for us, all the various steps of filmmaking, is to have an idea. And once you've had your idea, once you've started to make your film, then you at least have something to show to people. So when you come to a company like ours or any other company, you can give people an example of something you've done, and at the very least that shows your energy and your enthusiasm and your commitment. And that means so much, because there are so many people who kind of feel like they might want to be a filmmaker, but they have no sort of notion or no idea of what it actually involves. So it's difficult as an employer to get a sense of how serious they are about it. So I would definitely say, get stuck in. If you're interested, get stuck in and make a film. If you're interested in something more like a specific aspect of filmmaking, like you might want to work as an electrician within filmmaking, or you might want to work as a set builder, or you might want to work as a camera operator or camera assistant, or you might want to do what I did, which is work as a sound recordist. In other words, you're not interested in the whole process of making a film. You might not feel like you have ideas for making entire films, but you have skills which lend themselves to one of those technical aspects of filmmaking. I would say approach people who are already established in that field. Cold call them, send them an email. But when you do that, bear in mind that that person will get a lot of those emails, and the main thing that they want to see in people who are approaching them is energy and commitment and enthusiasm. they want you to succeed. We want you to succeed. We want to see a great new generation of aspirational, competent, high quality technicians and filmmakers come up. We're on your side. You need to bring the energy and the enthusiasm to the table, and there'll be people out there who will take you on and help you achieve what you want to achieve.
Thank you, Will. That was great advice, and I think that's probably would cross over to any industry or any job. It's about showing your commitment and your enthusiasm and your interest in that area. So that would probably fit with any of the panels this week, I think, that advice, but that's really good. Got a couple more questions come through the chat. So I'm going to think about who to ask. It might be more than one of you could answer this. Do you have to have good business skills if you work in the creative sector? It sounds like lots of the people on the panel have developed their own jobs and businesses. So we've actually got, a couple of people who've developed their own businesses. Tony, who's gone through lots of different guises and lots of different roles, and then Verity and Sean, who kind of work for local companies in East Sussex. I wonder if, Verity, have you got any thoughts about that, actually working for a small business? Do you think you have to have good business skills to be in the creative sector?
Yes, and also, well, it's difficult because I'm working as part of a business. But I know from watching my boss, she has to network a lot of the times to, drum up business with the local people for training and also for our services that we offer. You need to be able to advertise yourself online and across with other people, and it is about making those connections with other businesses as well, because if you're at an event or maybe you can't make an event and a business goes, oh, I need someone, a web designer, and you're going to recommend someone local to you who you've used. So it is very much about making those business connections online and at networking. So I'd say business skills are quite well needed.
Yeah, and it's communication skills, so that's come up in the chat.
Absolutely.
I wonder, Tony, would you like to add anything to that? Do you need to have good business skills if you work in the creative sector?
I was actually just looking something up because the Creative Industries Federation has identified that business skills are actually a bigger growth area in creative industries. So I think planning is very important with all of these projects that everyone's been talking about. But I don't want to get sort of too heavy into the sort of detail of that. If you're going to work in creative, then you need a combination of sort of passion and enthusiasm and original ideas with the practical skills. And I think it's important not to let sort of one side, take over completely. So I certainly think, that it's been identified that business skills, planning, financing, that kind of thing, looking to the future and thinking about your audience is really important.
Thank you. And I think, Will, would you like to add something to that, please?
I would agree with everything that's been said. I would also just add, though, that I consider myself a filmmaker. When I say to people I'm co-director of a company, it feels really weird to me to say that still, even though it's been the case for 6-7 years now. It's not something that comes naturally to me. And sometimes that presents problems for me. Like I struggle when I'm talking to my accountant and I understand about 5% of the words that he says. But so I guess my point is that the business side of things shouldn't be prohibitive in any way. You'll find a way through. You will bring your energy and your ideas and your creativity, and worry about the business stuff later.
Great, thank you. I think, Julian, you wanted to add something to that as well.
I think it's a good point that Will has there. I think that what happens when you have a business is we've seen growth. So when I started in business, it was just myself for 3 years. So I just had to manage me, and I was doing all the networking things. Most of my clients came from people I knew, that sort of stuff. And then you can turn a corner, and we went to one employee after 2 or 3 years, and we're up at sort of 7 or 8 now, and that's different. As you grow, you need a different set of skills. You know, you need people management skills. You know, these are things that aren't necessarily business skills. You need to really be, you know, controlled on financial planning. You know, you have to probably understand 6% of what your accountant says, not the 5. But believe me, 6 is enough probably. But yeah, so I think it's, as the business gets bigger, what are business skills is quite a difficult thing to understand. But I think you just need to be, what everyone said, organized. You need to have a plan. And you just need to sort of also get advice from the right sort of people. That's the whole Will saying he's got an accountant. I didn't have an accountant for 4 years. It was a nightmare. You know, I went VAT registered without having an accountant. It used to take me 2 weeks to do a VAT return every quarter. Ridiculous. So yeah, reach out, get the good people, get the training where you need it.
Great, thank you, Jim. We've got another question in the chat. So Sean, I'm going to go over to you for this one to start with. What's the best way to grow a website and make it more known?
Oh, I can certainly give it a shot. I'm probably going to embarrass myself in front of Julian, of course, somebody who is more of a professional. Really, I think it's something we can maybe take a bit of an amalgamation of stuff that's been said already by the panel this morning. If you're looking to grow a website, usually there's a few reasons behind it. Obviously, if it's for a product, a service, your company, that's probably something that's going to be interlaced with your social media strategy and branding in general. If you're looking to grow it from a kind of networking perspective as well, that kind of ties into social media too. Really, I think it's probably worth looking at the reasons why you are looking to grow it, what exactly it's for, who are you trying to target. Something that Julian mentioned earlier is something that we call SEO, or search engine optimization. So if you type something into Google, let's say Facebook, Google Mail, anything like that into Google, usually we're quite used to pretty much picking up the first result, maybe the first 5. And if you're off the first page of Google, forget it, no one's going to find you. So as a very, very, very general rule, I would say target in specific one market that you are looking to appeal to. So if your product is, let's say, men's clothes targeted at males between 30 and 40 years of age, for example, you would kind of look at search engine optimization for a demographic or a target group who may have interest in that area. But I'm going to delegate to Julian, who I'm sure is going to be far more knowledgeable in this sector than me.
Thank you, Sean. Go ahead, Julian. Can you answer that?
I think Sean's just about right. I think that there's a lot of technical aspects to this, and I'm going to pass that over to Verity actually, because it's kind of like exactly what her company do. But there's a lot of technical aspects to making a website successful. So there's the part that will be rewarded by somebody who's got technical skills, and then there's also the part that will be rewarded by people who've got imagination and can actually work out not just the men's clothes between 30 and 40, but where else are you going to get your traffic from? And I think that's something that I'll hand to Verity, because I think that's probably more what she does.
Okay, are you okay to fill in a little bit on that, Verity?
Yeah, so social media is very important for businesses. The main ones for business is obviously Facebook, although that's been quite controversial recently. And it totally depends what their product is. So if it's business to business, you'll want Facebook, LinkedIn, Google My Business, and Twitter. If it's more business to customer, then you'll want Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, it very much is about optimizing your pages, and every platform acts so differently. And we're seeing massive changes at the moment to Facebook and Instagram and how they're creating content. And it's a constant fight with the algorithm, but it's trying to make put across a clear message with your post, and have an eye-catching visual, whether that be an image or a video. Or at the moment, we're seeing, like, obviously with TikTok and everything like that, Instagram have taken that and obviously have done Reels, and Reels are skyrocketing at the moment. So we're seeing a lot of businesses starting to do that more so. And also hashtag clouds as well. So obviously on Instagram, you're allowed 30 hashtags, and on Facebook and other platforms, it's recommended to have like 4 or 5, with a mixture of what you're actually selling. So if it's men's clothes, you would probably put hashtag men's clothing, but also geographical as well. So if you're targeting the Eastbourne area and you want to pick up customers in that area, or the Sussex, you need to be including those hashtags to optimize it. And also on Instagram, it's about having a good bio and everything just streamlined across each platform. Not necessarily, all businesses don't have to have every platform. They just need to know where their audience is and to market properly on each platform accordingly.
Great, thank you. Well, between the three of you, I think you covered quite a lot of those aspects, so that's really helpful. And we have got a couple more questions in the chat, but I actually just wanted to ask, I think well, this is maybe hopefully a question for you, Tony, but if anyone else wants to chip in as well. Thinking about where the current skills gaps are in the creative and digital sector, where do you see the kind of growths and opportunity if we're talking to young people about where to look for their careers? So where are the gaps and where are the opportunities?
So gaps and opportunities. To be honest, I'm not a tech expert, so I'm going to defer to Verity, Julian, and Sean on this. Certainly, anything to do with technology and the delivery of services is massive, because we've all been at home for a year and we've all realised that a really important thing to do is to be able to consume the services that we want at home in a way that works for us. Where I would flip that to now is in the work that I do, is what I'm really interested in is what does society want coming out of COVID and everything else that's happened over the last few years? So the skill to develop is the ability for people to tell their story. And when I look at all of the people that I've worked with over the years and the ones who've had the strongest ideas, because the most important thing in the sector for success is to have ideas for programs and services that are strong and distinctive, and that people look at it and they say, right, I need to know about that. I need that in my life. So I think if you're wanting to get into the sector, what you need to get good at doing as young people is to research the thing that you're interested in, get to know about it, explore different aspects of it, and try it out. Will mentioned this earlier, that you don't need to say I want to be a filmmaker. Be a filmmaker. I was mentoring a 15-year-old guy in Paris, my friend's son, who wanted to get into film, and so him and his friends went off and made small films and were sort of running around the streets of Paris doing that. And he's now at film school in Cannes. So you get your ideas, you try them out, you see what works, and you get on with it. Because the fantastic thing about this sector is it is hard work. Don't get me wrong. You have to be really committed. But the thing is that you can get that instant enjoyment out of going into something, trying something out, experimenting, and seeing what works.
Great, thank you. And I don't know, I mean, I was going to add something. I think I mentioned earlier about cyber security, only because I think my daughter has had her bank account hacked for the 3rd time. So I think that is definitely an area of growth as digitisation and technology increases. How do we protect ourselves? And there are kind of whole career pathways in that area. Sean, would you like to add anything to that?
Just from a bit more of a technical perspective, perhaps. I think in terms of saying where is the skills gap, it's really quite hard, because there are so many boots to fill, so many different roles, which all can be quite specialised. You might find some technical roles which will require a massive amount of information and knowledge in one very specific area with little to no transferable skills. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are people like project managers, or in roles like my own, which basically have to have their fingers in lots of different pies. So I think the worry that some people have, and I certainly did when I was a little bit younger, is kind of specialising in something that's never really going to reward you with a job. In the technical side of the industry, I can say that that's more rarely the case nowadays. There are plenty of different roles and opportunities for different people, and chances are, if there's something that you have an interest in primarily, look at that, use that enthusiasm and motivation, and that will show beyond all else. Again, as Will said, if you want to be a filmmaker, that's what you need to do. You need to do exactly what it is that you're passionate about, whether it's, let's say, in video games design, making a website, being a programmer. Just use all of your assets that you have, whether it's a natural inclination to code or a great keen eye for design. Use all of those skills that you have to really excel in one particular role, and there will, chances are, be room for it in the industry. And if there's not, it's an industry that definitely has room for you to make that position work.
That's great. Thank you very much. We have got a question in the chat, which I think we've probably covered, but it may be that somebody would like to add to it. Talking about entering the digital sector or film, and wondering whether it was good to do an apprenticeship or a university course. Now, I think there are great challenges now, great new courses, degree apprenticeships coming along. Sean, I think you might be able to answer that, and Julian, you might have a view about apprenticeships as well. So should we go to Julian first, and then we'll come back to you, Sean?
I think they're both very different beasts in a funny way. I think if you put it in a cup or a pan and boil it down and what you get, I think a degree is very expensive, and I think an apprenticeship is much more at the coalface. It's as simple as that. I think if you can get an apprenticeship with a good company, that would be my advice as number one. I think if you're doing something that requires a high degree of learning, or something that's incredibly technical and requires the resources that a university and only a university would have, then that could be something that's more suited to a university. But there's a lot of great apprenticeships out there, and a lot of companies will take the right people on, even if they don't have a vacancy. And they'll just, if you turn up with a good little portfolio, a couple of good films like Will's told you to do, you are a filmmaker, go to Will, say, here are my films, Will, I want to be an apprentice for you. If you are interesting enough, he'll probably just take you on. It's that simple.
Thank you, Julian. And Sean, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. I think Julian's pretty much hit the nail on the head there. But just to kind of echo that and just to add my 2 cents, pretty much coming at it from the opposite end of being somebody who recently was looking for a job in technology, somebody who was a recent university graduate. It's a very, very difficult position to kind of consider. Obviously, being at the age of thinking, should I go for an apprenticeship? Should I really consider myself for a university degree? They are 2 completely different things. It is quite scary to occasionally check your, student finance letters and say, oh, I owe X tens of thousands of pounds in student loans. But it's something that really, I think, if it gets you the right skills for the job, it's a worthwhile investment, but you have to make it work for you. I went and studied a year of a philosophy degree, came straight out of 6th form, thought that was what I wanted to do, absolutely loved it, thought it was absolutely great, and about a year in realised definitely not going to get a job from this unless I want to be a teacher. Not really thinking that I'd be cut out for that, I decided to transfer and do something more technical. And really, it's one of those things that even if it hasn't given me a practical benefit, I've definitely benefited from studying a year of philosophy in terms of how you can think analytically, solve problems, even just for written word and communication, for example. But looking at the other end of the spectrum, we at Factory Internet have an apprentice who has just performed incredibly, who hasn't gone to university but has absolutely applied himself as well as any university graduate would, and has actually outperformed some other members of the team with far more qualifications than him through, exactly as Julian said, just having a really impressive not only portfolio but just motivation and a really keen interest. And I think that's something in IT and technology in general that you don't need a degree. There is no prerequisites unless you're at the very, very, very high end of things. Your natural aptitude and interest will get you far more, and experience is typically more valued than qualifications. So whilst you can't go wrong with either, if you can get a great apprenticeship, it's a fantastic way to go.
Thank you, Sean. Right, we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask each member of the panel succinctly to say one thing that you really enjoy about your job, and then one thing that is a top tip for anyone trying to enter your industry. So Verity, are you okay to go first? So one thing you enjoy about your job and a top tip for any other person thinking about getting into your world.
Yeah, so one thing that I do love about the job is so at the end of every month we create content reports for all of our customers to show them the stats and the statistics for their socials and how well they did, and just having that reward at the end when you see that little green plus at the end of all their statistics saying that, you know, their engagement went up and so did their reach and everything like that. It's not about followers, but if that goes up, that's great, but it's not about that, it's about all the other statistics that are involved. So that's really enjoyable, and obviously getting positive feedback from that. Top tip, I would say, if you did want to go into social media and to write, is just put yourself out there. If you have a current, just like a weekend job, or if you volunteer somewhere, ask them to say, hey, look, can I just write a couple of posts once or twice a week and get to grips with it and how different platforms work. Because that's definitely something employees of a social media company will look for, and just having a bit of understanding of how different platforms work. So yeah, just ask it your current employers, just be like, hey, can I just do it and just get a feel for it and learn a bit about it from there.
Great, thank you ever so much, Verity. That's brilliant. So, Will, I'm going to go to you next. One thing you enjoy about your job and a top tip for anyone getting into the industry?
Okay, I enjoy so much about my job, but I'm going to go for the sheer variety of the projects that I get involved with, and that means the different places I get to go, the travel, the people I work with, the different subject matter. Every project is different, and that keeps things constantly interesting. Top tip, I'm going to say, so focus on your positives. You will have things to bring to the table, and there will always be things that you don't know about. For example, I am not really interested in technical stuff, and when I'm standing there with a fancy camera, sometimes people come up to me and start asking me questions about this camera that I have no idea what they're talking about, and I used to find that really daunting, like I was an imposter because I didn't know how to do the tech chat. But I bring other things to the table, and I realize that now, and it'll be the same for you. There'll be lots you don't know, but focus on what you do know and where your talents are.
That's fantastic, thank you. I'm going to go to Tony next. So what do you enjoy about your job, and one top tip for getting into the sector?
Thank you. What I most enjoy about my job is the characters, whether it be the characters that people I've worked with have created, things like the Daleks, Teletubbies, things like that, or whether it's the actual characters of the people that I work with. And my top tip to people is have a portfolio and keep your stuff. The number of young people I talk to will sort of say, well, I'm into this, but I deleted it because I didn't think it was good enough. Be able to tell your story, keep a record of the stuff and your progression, so that if someone says, you know, what are you into, you're able to show them, you know, you've got a record of the stuff that you've done. Thank you.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Tony. So I'm going to go to Sean next, and then we'll finish up with you, Julian. So Sean.
Sure. In terms of a favourite thing about my job, I think it's probably, like Verity said, that rewarding feeling when you see that kind of tangible improvement or that completion of something, whether it's writing a piece of code that's taken you ages to do, whether it's seeing a whole project through to completion or delivering something to a customer and seeing it actually work properly and perform well is really, really reassuring, and it's really rewarding more than anything. And I think as a top tip to anybody looking to get into the sector, as opposed to learning any one individual skill, just try and train the transferable skills that you have, things like analytical thinking, problem solving. Try to be able to look at things and dissect them into their parts and say, okay, instead of thinking, why is this not working? Why is this broken? Saying, okay, well, are all of its components there? Is any one thing not working? And all of these things in either just having that creative eye, that fine eye for detail, or something a bit more technical, hopefully will help you along the way.
Thank you, Sean. That's crossing the two, isn't it? The creative and the technical. Okay, Julian, you're last to go. So what do you most enjoy, and what's your top tip?
Firstly, Tony's absolutely right. Keep a portfolio. One thing I missed out on my career journey is I did a degree in architecture only because I kept a portfolio all the way from the age of 16 to about 23. Anyway, what I like about mine is the same as Will. I like the variety, but what I really enjoy is getting my invoices paid, because that means we've done a good job. My top tip is quite simple, and it's a top tip not just for getting into this industry. It's my top tip is be interested. Whatever you do, make sure you're interested in it. Only, you know, those are the things that you want a career in, what you're interested in. Focus on being interested, get excited, get interested.
That is a fantastic way to end the session. Thank you very much to everybody. I hope you've enjoyed it. The session is recorded, and it will be edited, and it will be put on the Careers East Sussex Hub site in about mid-June. So thank you very much, and thank you to all the panel. Thank you for coming.